I guess we'll go ahead and get started. We don't have a quorum tonight, so we can't vote on anything. Mike and Adrian, I assume are still on their way. Amy is absent, Tom is absent, Anya's absent. A few members on their way. I'd like to start with public comment. You're good? Okay. For the chairman's report, just a few updates. The partnership I spoke about before with Sacred Heart University, dealing with Anna Price, who's a professor there. She's a public health professor. She has a few graduate students who are going to do some data collection on Mill Plain and like by Riverfield School and then down by Umpqua to kind of get the middle school and high school numbers. So she's going to do things like pedestrian counts and like car counts, like how many cars are coming to complete stops, how many are rolling through, and then kind of seeing what that comes. There's an opportunity to I have her come in, present her findings to the committee, to the town potentially, and then kind of like move forward with some additional studies. So that could be like interviews, sending out a survey to students and families, things like that. So it's exciting that that's moving forward.
Yeah. Will they be counting bicycles?
Yes, cyclists are included, and they'll do like a little bit before school. You know, they'll get there like a half hour before school starts, or the time for schools, both middle school, high school, and the elementary school, and then they'll get there like 10 minutes before it's released to kind of see what that does.
It's targeting schools.
This is targeting the schools right now, and then depending on like what they see and if it's beneficial, we could move forward with other things. And then I wanted to make sure everybody saw the school zones that got approved. So the 6 different schools, the 3 high schools, and then 3 elementary schools are now 20-mile-per-hour zones. And hopefully that will help. There's then, since that's been approved, I think there's like an advocacy piece the committee can work on to get the police to apply for the rest of the schools. So I did email with Hector Irizarry about that, and they're right now, I guess, just trying to assess kind of how effective the switch was and doing.
Will they ticket people? Are they going to patrol it?
So that's part of it, yeah. So there was supposed to be increased enforcement kind of for that. I personally haven't seen anybody at Riverfield, but that doesn't mean they haven't been there. So, and I followed up to ask kind of like what their plan for assessing how it's effective and how long it's going to be, but I haven't heard back. So there's that. And the other thing of note is that the LTA, the local traffic authority, is planning to transition from the police commission. The police commission voted on that last week. And I guess there's gonna be a 60-day transition period once it's finalized, but it still technically has to go through the RTM.
I don't mean to interrupt, just a word of clarification. They didn't vote, they discussed it.
Oh, sorry, I thought they voted.
Yeah, they didn't.
Oh, sorry, they did not vote. They just discussed it, but there would be a transition period.
Where will it go?
It would be a new body that would have representation from a bunch of different town groups, including engineering. I believe there's members of the police commission that would still be on it, and also the police department.
Does it take a charter change or an ordinance change?
There would be an ordinance change that would go through the RTM. So it's still a few months out, but I know the RTM has the ordinance. So it has to go through their process, which it's at least 3 months, I think, before it would be official. And then the other thing I was just gonna note is there was a pedestrian that was hit on Kings Highway recently, last week, over the weekend.
Details on that, I didn't feel like
That I don't know.
for journalism, this town is like pretty thin, and I rely on a cop's report. It's like,
I was just bringing it up to show that like the work we're doing has meaning, and is kind of important, like whatever, you know, the changes that we can kind of get made, through the, working with the town and things like that, like do have like a real impact, so.
You know where it was? In Kingstown?
the picture, I
By
pointed out the
Enzo's Deli,
picture
I
was
think.
in front of Gannon's nursery over there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What time of the day?
Yeah,
It was like 11:30, I think,
At night?
AM,
Yeah.
yeah.
New England.
I mean, that's a big, that's also like what, four lanes?
It's 4 lanes there, yeah.
Yeah,
That's when each.
But it's pretty broad open, you know, you can see somebody. It's not like there's a hidden corner.
No,
Right.
yeah, I don't know the details, so.
that's Route 1, right?
that?
It's Route 1.
Yeah.
State highway.
But that's it for me. Does anybody else have any?
I listened at the police commission
Oh, okay,
meeting
yeah.
that Sarah was just mentioning. And there was a whole discussion about the roundabout demo project and
On Reading Road.
Reading and Dunham, yeah. And I'd gone up when it was ongoing and they did a pretty good job. I mean, it wasn't fully signed and, you know, they did cones and, but they got a good feel whether the turning radiuses were gonna work. I was there when the fire truck couldn't quite get through it. So they had to make some adjustments, but, you know, it seems like a good idea. I mean, in general, there's not a lot of room for pedestrians along Reading Road up there. And I don't know if that's gonna really improve much, but in general, I think the idea of having something that'll slow traffic down there is a positive. There was one gentleman who spoke up against it because he'd been driving through there since forever. He's lived up there growing up and now has his own house there and he didn't understand the point. He thought it was gonna make it more dangerous. And then Sarah spoke up quite, well, actually Mega did a good job explaining how it was all gonna work and that there would be better signage and so on and so forth. And then Sarah spoke quite well in favor of.
Do they need more real estate there to make that, because there's plenty of easement, I would think, around that.
A lot of land.
Not my union.
I don't know.
For the roundabout?
Yeah.
I think there's ample room to implement that, whether they could do a bit of widening to provide better pedestrian access, just between there and Dwight School. You've got like that much shoulder. I was there with my dog and I kept having to like go into the bushes. So,
It's tight.
yeah.
How about, what do you call it, Villa Avenue? So the gas company's done, they paved that road. Are they actually gonna, is town gonna put in that design that they piloted there?
As far as I know, yes, but I know that the Villa residents have been asking for an update on when that's going to come through and they haven't gotten an answer as far as I have seen. Sarah, you don't happen to know
That's a
anything
town
about
road.
Villa, do you?
I don't, I've been CC'd on those, or BCC'd, I don't know, but yeah, I don't know, I know like, they were waiting on the gas company, so what they're waiting on now, I don't know, because they don't like to pave too far into the fall, so I'm not sure. Or like do construction too far, into the fall, so.
Amy probably knows more.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of issues with like the buses and the kids getting on the bus and stuff too, so it's definitely a heightened issue for that community there. But I don't,
You mean, is that working against making the changes?
no, I think they're just kind of, the Villa residents are kind of saying like a lot of, like, something bad could happen and we need the traffic calming that was approved, you know, a year ago. And the work's been done, so, yeah, so. We can ask engineering if they come tonight. Okay. Anybody else? I have the New Britain Hartford field trip on here. I don't know, Adrian, if you wanna, cause you were there for both pieces, if you wanna just share.
Perhaps.
If you just wanna share kind of your takeaways, or anything, I don't mean to put you on the
Oh,
spot, but.
no, and I should have kind of composed my thoughts, but in general, it was really worthwhile. Thanks very much to Sarah for organizing it. It was really interesting to see much of Hartford, which I had never seen before. I've seen like, little bits. And I had never been to New Britain. And it was interesting to see that, they have all of the ingredients for a really thriving downtown. They've got a ways to go until that really comes together, but it's really have good street wall, and it's dense and it's attractive. It's got a lot of the elements of, and wearing my city planner hat that make it very appealing. And interesting to see kind of what worked in terms of transportation, from our perspective, right? And one thing which was particularly interesting in Hartford, and this isn't so good for the folks on the phone, but there was an intersection that looked, just picture a regular old intersection where there had been two-way traffic on both streets. And apparently it really was problematic for the neighborhood. There were a lot of cars going very fast. And what they did is they put in this little island like this, a diagonal island. And so these cars could go this way, and these cars could go that way, or maybe it was must have been the other way around. But they made the traffic, rather than one way on each street, two ways. And this little island, which had some planters in it, totally changed the traffic patterns. And it was not something I had seen before. So we saw other things too, but they were kind of specific to Hartford, to a city. So I'm not sure that they would apply as much in Fairfield. But this particular thing I thought was something to really keep in mind for, that could potentially work. The one thing that I thought was weird was that we stood on what was essentially this corner, that, just shy of 12 o'clock. And there was a stop sign here, and there was a fair amount of traffic. Not one car even paused. It was as though the stop sign didn't exist.
Is it redirecting to a left-hand turn there?
Yeah,
And that's the only option?
yeah, right. So it totally,
It's
you
just
can't
stop
go,
and
you
then go.
can't
Is there a
go.
crosswalk?
All of these streets had sidewalks, but whether there was a painted crosswalk, I don't remember. I don't think that the streets bulbed out in the corner, but I can go through my photos and look, but the streets were relatively narrow. I mean, they
Yeah.
were not terribly wide. I was actually surprised that they had formerly been two-way. But it was both inspiring and dismaying to see all in one
Solve
shot.
thing and
Yeah,
create another.
right. So I don't know if they had been more respectful of it. When the traffic was going two ways in two directions, I imagine they had to be respectful of the stop sign, right?
Yeah,
So,
you would think.
but it would be interesting to know what the results have been in terms of, collisions. Anyway, I could go on, but that was probably the most relevant immediate thing here. I'm sure other people have other things that they would, talk about.
Yeah, the only thing I've never been to New Britain before, and I was only able to make it for that piece. But it is, one thing that was cool is one of their like major long streets where I guess they've clocked, people going 40, 45 miles an hour. It's pretty, dense area. And they've done, they did a demonstration project, so you could see kind of where they provided space for people to cross at intersections that are like higher traffic, and then also like in front of, I think it was a mosque, and then they have like the bulb outs too that are, they have the flex posts, but they're also just painted. And it's kind of similar to the takeaways from Hoboken, which is, you know, a lot of these things can be done quickly without a lot of capital too. Like it's just paint and some flex posts. So that I think is it's cool to see when it's actually implemented, how kind of fast those can come up. And then they're using that to inform, you know, their actual infrastructure changes on that street. So I think the crosswalk that I was mentioning will be a raised crosswalk, and it'll have the bulb outs that are, you know, I don't know if they'll leave them painted or they'll do concrete or some combination, but again, it's just a lot of this stuff is not that expensive, to at least try out and see what works and get feedback.
I think I am glad that you mentioned that. I can't believe I forgot about that. But I think that when they actually do it for real, they're planning to use a different material in what would be that area.
Oh, okay, I
Um,
missed that.
And maybe there was going to be a bump in there that I'm not sure about, but it would be interesting to know and to see what the results of that work are.
Sarah, do you have anything to add about the trip? Sarah, for those who don't know, organized it with a couple more local Hartford folks. And it was, the New Britain stuff was awesome. A bunch of people, just to back up, took the train from New Haven to Hartford, did a walking tour of Hartford to kind of see the infrastructure improvements that Hartford's been able to implement, to make it more walkable and bikeable. And then everybody kind of hopped on this fast track, did I get that right? Over to New Britain. And then we did a short little walking tour of New Britain too, which we talked about.
I will say, yes, there were crosswalks. I looked at my picture at that, the diverter. At all four. And yeah, it was really great. I'd highly encourage you if you can come to ones in the future, you know, do one in New Haven, maybe Stamford, and maybe some other place, Weathersfield, I think. I'm very curious about Weathersfield.
It's in West Hartford doing a lot of stuff. That's a community that's similar.
Yes, they are, yeah. Yeah, we could do West Hartford too.
You know, like, because we're not a city.
Yes, and a lot of what they're doing is completely applicable to you know, it's not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It's, you know, similar goals and infrastructure. But yeah, we could certainly look at West Hartford. They are doing some road diet stuff that I think would be interesting to see. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say something about the Hartford New Britain trip. Oh, yes. So one of the people who attended it is a city engineer is an engineer for the city of New Haven, and he has a YouTube channel called Everyday Engineering, and he put out a 10-minute video about summarizing. He also did one for Hoboken, which you might have already seen, but giving the highlights of the tour and explaining the infrastructure. And he did a really good job. He just posted that last night, so.
And I can send that out to
That
the
would be great. Yeah.
committee, because it is a great summary. He does a really nice job.
Well, there were so many worthwhile things to see that, you know, where they had really put in some interesting, you know, techniques to slow traffic and so on, which really inspiring. It was also interesting to see where there were leaks in the system. Not because I'm looking to criticize Hartford or New Britain. I mean, it appears that they're all, you know, working hard to make these places better. But I thought it was interesting, I've forgotten the name of the park in Hartford, seeing the cars just drive into the park. And I think it's just about, there's so much that one needs to communicate through design about where you can go with a car and where you can't. And it was just a strong lesson in that, watching these cars, like, how did you think that this was okay, you know? But it was an awesome day.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And if you haven't been on Fast Track, I'll just add this one last plug. So cool to see real BRT.
Yeah.
That I didn't even know existed. That was really awesome.
What is it again?
Bus rapid transit
Okay.
you're familiar with that? It's where you have a dedicated road for buses, you pay off board. They're typically articulated buses, double length. And they basically took what was formerly a rail line and repurposed it for this, 20-mile length? Was it that long? 12-mile? I can't remember what its length.
It has multiple routes. It's not just to New Britain. I think there's a couple other, yeah.
But those buses just sped through. It was crazy. It was like being on a fast train. I mean, it made Metro North feel like a jalopy.
That's so interesting, because you think of these old towns, if you look dig, there's still the old trolley lines left, underneath there, you dig far enough, and it's like, keep wondering if there's a place for those sometime in the future.
But yeah, this exists a lot in Europe, but
Mhm.
and they started in Brazil. I'm forgetting. Jaime Lerner was the mayor. It'll come to me right after I walk out of here. But they've been around for a while, but it's significantly more affordable to introduce a bus rapid transit than a new rail line. And buses have the flexibility to change routes if you realize that, there's greater density in a new part of town that you hadn't anticipated or whatever. So they can be bus rapid transit for part of the route and be kind of, more typical service for the outer legs or whatever. So.
Thanks for sharing. Sarah?
Good to go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me get this up here. And slideshow. There we go. All right. All right. You can see it. All right. Hey, everybody. I think I know everybody here. It's nice to meet you. So just for the recording, my name is Sarah Roy, and I'm here to talk to you about the power of play streets. It's providing safe spaces for activities and connections. So why? Because this is a picture from my neighborhood. I live up in Stratfield Village, and this is Valley Road. And one of my neighbors who has a small child for a few years now has been very sick and tired of people driving dangerously down Valley Road at excessive speeds. And she puts out this little turtle, which people have stolen in the past. So she has chained it and sunk the chain in concrete and to make sure that doesn't happen. But it was going around Facebook neighborhood groups for a while. People, one person complained that they had to slightly, go around this turtle, which sticks out less than a car would. And there was some back and forth on the Facebook page. And I said, there was a time before we surrendered our public spaces to cars that everybody was in the street. It was a point of connection. It was where children played. It played a very important part in our social and public lives and in our health. And the person replied, children don't belong in the street. The only appropriate place for them to play outside is in the yard and the driveway. And I said, hold my beer. So that's not true, and we're going to make sure that you eat those words. So I've read about these Play Street programs, and I think that it's high time we had one in the town of Fairfield. So what are Play Streets? Play Streets, or playing out sessions, are neighbor-led short road closures, creating a safe space for children to play freely together on their street. Some key features of this model are they're resident-led and organized, like a block party. The town provides the permission, but it's really up to the residents to make it happen for themselves. They're short, regular road closures, usually between like 90 and 120 minutes. Could be once a week, every couple of weeks, once a month, but it's not every day. It's a regular but infrequent thing. It allows for free child-led play, which is a very important part of development that is often missing in the 21st century, is just being able to free play. All the neighbors are consulted and included, like a block party. The road is legally and safely closed to through traffic. It's stewarded by residents. If cars that live, people live on that street need to access, they can access at a walking pace. They're allowed to come in. It's simple, it's normal, it's not a block party, but the administration policies and procedures are similar to a block party. So how it works, I'm just gonna show like a minute of this. Let me make sure that my volume's on, because I thought it was pretty cool. This is a block party in Leeds.
Play Street are short closures of residential street that are organised by local. One of the things that every child
Okay, so that's a little snippet of One Play Street in Leeds. Come on. Okay, so the impact of play streets, children's health, physical and mental health is improved through activities outside. It builds stronger communities when people feel free to mix and mingle on the street. They get to know their neighbors and build relationships. Active citizenship, like I said, it's neighbor-led and resident-led, and so it encourages people to participate in their both their government and their neighborhood. Active travel, so when people become more comfortable walking and biking on their streets, it's encouraging them to mode shift away from always relying on their vehicle, which is an important culture change to get us healthier, more connected, and make our streets safer by reducing the number of cars. So this is a list, I'm not gonna read through it all. Communities that have adopted Play Street programs, the first 5 are in the United States. And then there's multiple communities in the UK and Denmark that have also adopted Play Street programs. They all vary in terms, they're similar, but they have different stipulations. So for Fairfield, which streets would be eligible to be play streets? Most local residential streets with a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or lower would be good candidates for a play street program, but arterials, collectors, state-controlled roads, and highways obviously would not be eligible. So how does a play street program fit into the Vision Zero vision? So it would create community connection and enrichment. And it's also a public health investment and a mode shift investment for pretty low money because it's resident led. So the next steps, if we wanted to move forward as a community to try to do this, would be to identify leads for the program, establish goals and timing, identify streets and parameters for a pilot program based partially on a block party permit. It has been suggested in talking with others, like let's try this out in all different neighborhoods, different weeks, perhaps in the spring to see how it goes just as a pilot, and then evaluate the pilot results and revise the program procedures as needed, and then launch the official program. So I will send Sarah a PDF of this presentation. I think I already shared the Google Slides with you. I provided some additional materials with links. This Playing Out website is a comprehensive resource. Probably any question or concern you have about a Play Streets program or resource or information you're looking for is in this website. I went through it. It's pretty cool. And then I also included links to some United States examples. So you can check those out as well. So that's it. I'll stop sharing. Oh, wait, stop sharing. Yeah, thank you. Any questions? Adrian?
I am all in favor of it. I'm wondering if you have a sense of how you want to execute it. Do you need a grant?
I mean, a grant would be cool. I don't know. It's my understanding from some of the communities that do this, not all. Some do provide supplies. Cambridge definitely provides some supplies, but in the UK, it's like you provide all your own supplies. So I think we could do it either way. I'm sure they didn't have a grant to start the block party program. You know, they just made it happen. Yeah.
And like, do you need those horses or?
Like, I know they supply those for the block parties. That would be wonderful if they'd supply them for this, but and in the UK,
They charge you.
They charge you, yes, they charge you for that. And I think like $25 or
Yes,
something.
exactly.
Yeah.
I just did it.
Oh,
a
nice.
week ago.
You did? In the UK, if you can watch that whole video, it's over 4 minutes. That's why I didn't play it. They took like garbage bins and then took like that ski fencing, orange ski fencing, and held that with garbage bins and then just said like Play Street, local traffic only. I don't know what the police, I was hoping they'd be here so we could kind of talk about what would be expected, whether it has to be a horse or something else.
I can't help but refer to my own experiences. As a little kid, we lived in suburban Houston, Texas, lived in suburban Dallas, Texas. We moved to Kansas City into a neighborhood that just didn't have kids in it. And all those other places previously had, like rafts of, marauding 4-year-olds, 5, 6, and their 8-year-old siblings there. So it seems like the first thing you would need would be a critical mass of kids. This is actually going on in our neighborhood right now.
Yeah.
And it's like a Hallmark card, and it's just amazing. It breaks your heart every time. And we've got the 12-year-olds who are kind of keeping their eye on the 8-year-olds, and the other ones when they're playing in the street will say car, so there's just like we always did. And it seems to be organically working, and it's like almost like as much as we like to impose that on people, it's like it kind of happens unto itself. How do we kind of water that, I guess, a little bit? And to your point, and giving it a name of a program and communicating that through communication throughout the town. It's like, hey, doesn't everybody remember a childhood that looked like this? Wouldn't you like to perpetuate that? By the way, if you're a homeowner in the neighborhood, you have no problem going walking speed to your driveway, coming home from work. But guess what? The guys are cutting. This is another thing. I live right off the post road. You have people cutting through all the time and not, they don't care. And those are ones we have to look out for. Now, some are more polite than others. But if we had a sawhorse at the beginning of that street that they had to drive around, that had some sort of notification, it's like, you're secondary in your priority here.
Yeah.
And
And
the only thing
I
the only
mean,
thing I would add is like, we have it on, like, we have a double dead end cul-de-sac on our street, so like we have kids in the road and like you have kids, but there are some like parts of town, like Valley Road, where it's just not like safe to have the kids out, and like it would at least provide an opportunity for people that don't have it organically in their neighborhood, have an opportunity to have it in their neighborhood.
So would Valley Road qualify? That's a busy street.
Yeah, it would, it's a residential street with 25 mile per hour. And what I would envision if I were a Valley Road resident, and I wanted to do this, is I would close it from Livingston to the Merritt Street Bridge, or the opposite, the Merritt Street Bridge to Wilson Street. That way, there is still access to half the road.
Get around.
And people can just go around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be, and that's a pretty long stretch. That's a long road. So I think that's ample room for, I mean, like I said, it's 90 to 120 minutes, maybe once a week at the most. So to cut off one small section of Valley once a week for a couple hours, it's like, I think that's a very reasonable ask for children to feel safe.
There are a lot of young kids on that street.
Yeah, I talked to the slow turtle lady and she's like, oh my God, there's like 5, you know, like she's counting all the families with little children, showing me the houses. She's like, they would go bananas for this. They would be so excited. So
There are kids who will come from nearby, probably.
absolutely. you
It's
know,
not
they can-
just limited to
They
those.
could stuff, you know, put flyers in the door, say we're gonna have a play street Sunday 2 to 4, whenever, like, you know, whatever makes sense for them. And the other, to your point, Mike, too, I know in the UK, and I didn't look deep enough into the US examples, there's a volunteer adult that stands on each end of the closure. So that if somebody needs, you know, a resident needs to come through or somebody comes by like, why is the street shut down? They'd be like, it's cool, play street, you can come back through at 5 or whatever. So,
Don't worry about the Uber drivers. That's what we found at our block party.
oh, really? It's just too bad for them. Just have to go, like, sorry.
And also that street you showed the example of in Leeds, I mean, that's a neighborhood that was built prior to motor vehicles. So there's, you know, it had a life before that, it's probably horse driven.
Yeah.
But they're clearly dealing with nothing, you know, barely a sidewalk in front of each dwelling there, so it's like to the modern suburb that has more of a suburban, somebody has a lawn, you've got more space to kind of elbow around. I think it would be easier here and
Yeah, so I think I would love your support if folks wanna to help with this. I think the next step would be hopefully talking to the police, and perhaps to the first selectman's office and say, like, we'd like to try this. Have those conversations now, and you, sir, if you know, you get some streets in mind in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we already do that.
You already do it?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's sort of like somebody gets the pickleball net and actually in the middle of the street,
yeah.
blocks it out.
Yeah, so I just wanna start the conversations now so that hopefully we could do some pilots in the spring.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah, I would definitely love to support that.
cool. Thanks.
To your point, I'm just thinking out loud here, but you know, the places where that's already happening, imagine capturing video and delivering that to local cops or whatever politicians that are involved and say, listen, we need more of this
Yeah.
for multiple, all the reasons you list there. And it's already happening organically in lots of places. We just need to
Yeah.
get that idea and foster it and create a mental environment where people, oh, I see what, I'm down with that. I remember, okay, I'll slow down or I'll take the alternate route. And I, you know.
It's really, you know, we're providing the environment and the structure for neighbors to take the initiative to do it for themselves. So it's really not asking for much work on the part of the town. It's just like, give them the okay, basically, and set the rules.
Yeah, and to your point, the block party is a very similar
Yeah.
kind of idea, right? You're closing the street down for a
Exactly.
certain period of time,
And it's
so.
usually much longer.
Yeah.
Much longer period of time.
Right, so,
Yeah.
awesome.
Anything to get them off their phones.
Yeah, yeah, and outside.
In the middle of reading Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation, where he
Mhm.
refers to the generation before his play-based childhoods that segued into phone-based childhoods, and that the dramatic and mostly negative effects of that are tremendous. So anytime I see a kid outside talking to another one without something in their hand, it feels like a win. I don't know, they might be plotting some disaster, but at least they're not staring into a phone.
Okay, awesome, thanks, Sarah. So we were supposed to have Jeff Randolph here to talk about 20 is plenty, which is kind of like a grassroots idea, where 20 miles per hour is plenty. It's fast enough to be driving in most like residential neighborhoods, kind of like what we were talking about with the play streets, like similar streets that are structured that way. I think we'll just maybe ask him to come to the next one to give you some more color on like what that is, and maybe if it's something we could bring to Fairfield. It would be like a grassroots kind of campaign that the committee could support. And 20 miles per hour is also, if you were to be struck by a vehicle, you would be likely to survive it if a car was only going 20 miles per hour. So that's kind of what's how it's all tied in together. So I guess we'll just pick that till next time. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about tonight is considering kind of with the Anya couldn't be here tonight to kind of wrap up the committee values conversation, but we'll bring that to the next meeting to kind of say like, these are the values that the committee are like largely in sync on. And then a lot of those, we pulled ideas from Vision Zero, and then we have this town grant, the Safe Streets for All grant, that's like specifically tied to Vision Zero, which is, zero traffic fatalities. So kind of introducing the idea of revising the committee charter to kind of have some of those ideas tied into it, kind of because then the overall goal is as a committee, we're working towards something tangible, which is like zero traffic deaths, and then like how the committee fits into that through like our advocacy, like community engagement, things like that. So I circulated, sorry, to back up a little bit, part of with Vision Zero though is that it affects a lot of different people, right? It's not just, the first selectman's office, it's not just us as a committee, it would heavily involve, the police and engineering, the health department, like DPW, Department of Public Works, and a bunch of other things. So what Jersey City did to make sure that like everybody was kind of on board was that they put together this pledge that they actually had representatives from, a bunch of different town departments sign to kind of say everybody is on board. So what I'd like to do is take that, it's a draft pledge, what I sent you guys, and if you have feedback, I'm welcome to any like feedback or changes. Like to take that to the first selectman's office and kind of all ties nicely together with him then being able to take that to the different departments and get the buy-in from the relevant parties. And then it all kind of trickles back to the Safe Streets for All grant. If we do, Sarah had that slide up there about like Vision Zero, how like play streets would play into it, how potentially a 20 is plenty campaign. So it's just kind of ties everything back to the overall goal. So if you guys have any feedback, welcome to hear it. You can also email me.
This is great.
Questions?
Yeah.
Or comments, I guess, on the pledge, the second paragraph, number 4. I don't quite understand. It says transportation planning should focus on system level changes about influencing individual behavior. That word about, is it targeting individual behavior, about individual? It just doesn't seem that clear to me.
Okay, I think that is specifically one of the Vision Zero principles, but
I get that.
yeah, no, but I
The way
understand.
it's written, it's
I understand.
not very clear.
Yeah, I think that would be,
I'm gonna hard stop it.
okay.
We'll see you again next month.
Okay.
So good to see you.
You too. Yeah, I think that would be fine.
And then the next paragraph, for Vision Zero to be successful, it must be thoughtfully integrated into and embraced by multiple. So what is it integrated into?
Specifically, like I think just like decision making.
Then that should say that, because you want people to read it and understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
Those are my 2 comments. So, take or leave them. I'm just
Yeah.
throw them out
I
there.
think that makes
That's
sense.
good.
Anything else?
Yeah, it's a big job. Now look at that list of people.
Yeah.
Change comes hard.
It does. Does anybody have any new business?
I'm gonna talk about the list.
Oh, sure, yeah. I don't have a, so I think like this is, like the engineering list. Yeah, I think it's something we've been kind of asking for as a committee, like a list of projects that engineering is kind of working on that have a pedestrian and cyclist, focus, so, you know, things where the roads are gonna be changing. I feel like we hear about them kind of ad hoc, and there's no real way to know, like, are there places where we can add value or not? So I've been asking engineering for a while now for it. Adrian, it came up, Adrian was at the Sustainable Fairfield meeting and Mary was asking about it. Cause a lot of their like brands and things like, you know, they wanna tell what Fairfield's doing. So I talked to Christine Brown about kind of getting one recently. She hasn't gotten back to me on that for this week, but the idea would be just kind of like get a starting point, and then to the extent that in these meetings, like we're getting updates, like we can kind of keep it updated for our own, you know, information and things like that. I think that's the only way until we get a complete streets coordinator who would hopefully be have more like program or project management. That's kind of where we are, so.
I would propose keeping, I mean, I think that's the primary thing, but I think we also want to keep a list of major transportation related projects where we can influence the design to make them more bike and pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, that's kind of a phantom list or a
Well,
second
but it's
list.
not, because the idea with the safe and livable streets ordinance is that any time a road is to be paved, they're supposed to be looking at like what elements of complete streets that, you know, they can put into it. And now that's like part of the town law. So just as an aside, Mill Plain was up on the paving list and so it was not the whole thing, but it was part of it that had the Stilson intersection, the Duck Farm Round Hill intersection that nobody knows how to navigate, and they took it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like, you know, they're like, those are real problems that like should be incorporated before it gets paved. And so I brought it up to Christine Brown and Bill Gerber, and they met with the head of DPW, and he's like, they took Mill Plain off the list because there isn't a plan. And now, you know, they're gonna hire or have hired a consultant to look at Mill Plain for it. But that's, you know, that's still reactive and not, and I guess Christine said to me that, you know, it wasn't like alarm bells were going off because they were viewing it as like a paint, like a restriping thing, like it would just be a paint issue. But that's also part of the problem is you're not looking at it like from an infrastructure change. And you know.
Is that intersection that bad? I mean, I've driven
Which
it for
one?
years. You're talking about where, if you were going down Mill Plain towards the Post Road. So when you get to Round Hill, it goes off to the left and you go up a little bit and it's Duck Farm.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy, but it's not
It's-
that bad.
A friend of mine just sent me the Dads of Fairfield. Somebody was complaining about it just last week, like nobody knows what to do. Are you supposed to yield? There's a sign, but nobody obeys the sign. And so, yeah, I think it is. I think that's an intersection I hear about a lot.
But I mean, you get a driver's license, you're supposed to have some competence. in being-
But that's not the way
Come on.
these designs are supposed to work. They're supposed to be obvious and the design is supposed to tell you to slow down so that pedestrians and bicyclists can also use those streets safely. And
I'm-
the
There's
way
two
it's
crossing
designed
guards there
doesn't-
in the morning for Riverfield. That's crazy. Like,
No,
but
I'm
it's-
riding my bike.
You know what?
And
Oh,
I've
okay.
never, and a lot of times I cut off and go up on Round Hill. So you just have to be careful, but I would, you know, if I had my druthers, just pave the road because it's getting pretty bumpy. And, you know, they don't need to put bike lanes, they just need to sweep that shoulder once in a while. Because I ride there all the time and there's all kinds of junk in that area that you're supposed to ride in. So you wind up going out into the travel lane. And I brought it up to Bill Hurley, he said, well, they do it once a year. It's like, then they said, get the address. I said, the address?
The whole road.
I'm in my head, man.
If I'm familiar with that intersection as well, and I've ridden my bike, and I've driven, and I've probably walked through it with you, and I agree with what Adrian's saying. There is a history of complaints, and because, you know, just because we're not experiencing something doesn't mean it's not happening. And so it's happening for other people. And I think also, while some people, more confident cyclists might feel safe just riding in the shoulder, the true test of your bicycle infrastructure or lack thereof is, you know, would you send your 6-year-old or your 86-year-old
You know what?
in those streets?
Never. Even if, the only way I would do that is if there was a protected bike lane, and that's just not gonna happen.
Why wouldn't it happen?
I don't know,
Because
I don't think,
people
I don't say it's
understand
not
why
gonna
it's
happen.
And it's a busy street.
Yeah, which is
So
why
I
it's
wouldn't put
needed.
a 6-year-old.
I mean, my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old ride on Mill Plain almost every day. Most of it in the on the sidewalk because it's not safe to be in the road. But I would love to have, like, not, you know, to do the right thing and have them on the correct side of the road and all of those things, but it's just the infrastructure doesn't exist. But I wanna work to get it to a place where it does exist.
And it,
It's
So-
such a hard one to do there, though.
It is, but it's not impossible, so like,
and it's not,
But get easy wins to build some momentum.
That's,
You know, you gotta get it going.
have you ever been to the Westfield neighborhood of New Haven?
Where is that? I went to school in New Haven.
The
Do you know where the Yale Bowl is?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So a very similar, it's a residential, it doesn't look like a city. It is a residential neighborhood. It looks very suburban. They have a cycle track. So they have the sidewalk, then they have a strip of grass, and then they have a cycle track. And this is a densely populated residential neighborhood.
Mhm.
It's political will, and
And it's Yale.
it has nothing to do with Yale. It was the city.
Now,
Tim,
yes, Yale is the biggest taxpayer in the city of New Haven. They have all these kids that live there that ride bikes. Man, that's a wonderful thing to have. And there's a will by the administration to make things happen.
we have that will here now. We have that will.
But, oh, okay, we do here, but once you leave this room and go out there, it ain't happening right now.
I respectfully disagree with that attitude. That's the kind of attitude that makes nothing happen.
No, I'm not saying that it can't happen.
When I
But
met,
just
when I
being
started in
realistic.
this town with advocacy, I was told that hell would freeze over before we ever had quick build demonstration projects, before we ever had neighborhood traffic circles, before we would ever consider raised crosswalks or intersections, okay? All those things are happening now. Through persistence and through education and through being a pain in the ass. And so you can take the attitude of it's too hard, and that's fine for you.
What I'm saying is, some of the players have to change to make it happen. And probably the key one did, first selectman. He wants this.
And I was in a meeting with Bill Hurley yesterday? Yes, with the MetroCog Transportation Technical Advisory Committee. And they were talking about how the Connecticut DOT, as of June 2024, the commissioner put out a declaration that quick build projects will be allowed on all state roads. They have to be initiated by the town, but they are encouraged and welcome to do that. And Bill Hurley was pumped. He was so excited, and he was asking all these questions, and he's into it. And that is progress. That is awesome, because when I asked about quick build projects on state roads a few years ago, I was told never gonna happen. And so
and Bill came to Hoboken with us.
Bill came to
And-
Hoboken.
And that
with
I
us.
thought was huge. And he saw firsthand, like Hoboken's done some just like so like amazing things. And most of them is like we were talking about with New Britain, it's just pain. And I think he was energized by that. And, you know, I think Mega's energized by it too. So, you know, that's another important piece. So we have the first selectman's office, we have engineering,
Meg was telling me last week at the police commission meeting about how she's, looking into all these quick build materials and she's really excited.
Yeah, like now's the time to try and do some of these things. You know, we have, maybe 3 years, maybe longer, but like we have 3 years and like jam in as much as we can in those 3 years, so.
Yeah.
It's my attitude anyway.
I don't know if you noticed Jeff.
Yeah, I
don't-
do see Jeff. Jeff? How are you?
Good. Sorry, I've got house guests and I forgot this meeting. So,
Okay.
do you want me to talk about 20 is plenty?
Yeah, I'd love for you to, if you.
Oh, great. Okay, so let me share my screen. Let me know when you can see it.
We're good.
All right, so let me see if I can get to view slideshow. All right, can you see the full screen now?
Yes.
So I think I've met many of you before. My name's Jeff Randolph. I'm elected to planning and zoning, and I've lived in Fairfield since 1995. I'm mostly a road cyclist, but I ride probably, I don't know, 60 miles a week, so I'm on my bike a lot. And our town is extremely dangerous. I rode twice downtown. I've got an e-bike and I went downtown for a couple of errands, and I've not come so close. I went and looked at the Exide site as part of TP&Z, and I've not felt so endangered riding my bike, other than when I go downtown. I live in Stratfield, and it's really bad. It's really bad. I went to a meeting with Bill Gerber. I think the meeting was at 3:30, and it was really dangerous. It was dangerous for a couple of reasons. One, there's no allocated lanes, and I'm a confident rider. I got an e-bike. I ride pretty fast, so I can stay, kind of ahead of the traffic. But the other is that the speeds are inconsistent, and I think people just aren't aware of how fast they're driving. And one of the initiatives, and I've been working with Sarah on this SS4A grant, which we got, and we're trying to get that going. But one of the things that I've traveled internationally a lot of different cities, and I've seen cities. My sister's lived in Seattle for a long time, and I've seen Seattle go from what we are today with no bike lanes to, being a very bike oriented city. So it can happen. It is political will, and we have that. But one of the things is awareness. And people I think there's a big push right now to say slow down Fairfield. And there's an initiative to have a communications campaign. And my suggestion is to adopt the international campaign of 20 is plenty. And what that does is it's recognized by the World Health Organization. It's very popular in the UK. They've got it in a lot of major cities. I can list it, I'll show you later. But what this suggests is that on non-arterial roads, people drive 20 miles an hour. And for Fairfield, I don't know this exact percentage, but that's probably 80% of the roads in Fairfield. It's really well more than half, but it forces people to think about it. And it's not mandate, it's really more an awareness campaign. So let me take you through the 20 is plenty. So the objective is to encourage drivers to slow down. This started in the UK and it's been adopted globally as part of Vision Zero effort. And there's 50 cities in the US. And when you think about 20 being too fast, they do this in New York City, Boston, and Seattle. And it's integrated into speed management. And it's significantly reduced traffic speeds and a drop in pedestrian fatalities. This is mostly a pedestrian-oriented initiative. And traditional focus is, prioritizing cars, telling people, hey, you're a bad driver. 20 is 20 is really trying to prioritize children, cyclists, the elderly, and focuses on the whole community rather than just locations. And it tries to prioritize community members, not just prioritize drivers. And it really, I think all of you know that, the dangers of vehicular collision when cars are going fast. But in Fairfield, we've got technically a lot of kids who are eligible for walking, and there is, I'll say, and I'm on TP&Z, there's essentially no infrastructure for that. So McKinley just got a grant, but you know, the McKinley, if you look at the network around the McKinley schools, there aren't sidewalks. You know, so elementary schools are supposed to walk a mile, and if you drew a radius, and I've got an example of this later, there are no sidewalks. So until we get sidewalks, we should tell people to slow down. And this, you probably all have seen this before, the impact of driving more slowly. You know, it's significant. If people are driving at 20 miles an hour, the chance of reducing death or injury is improved quite significantly. And I'll send this to you, you can look at it. And who's adopted this? This is happening in big cities and small. You know, if New York City can do something like this, certainly Fairfield can. You know, New York City is a way more complicated place, and they've adopted this. Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, and you might say, well, this is just big cities. Small city towns are doing this too. Boulder, Santa Monica, Flagstaff, Arizona, Ithaca, New York, Missoula, Montana, Laramie, Wyoming. Small towns are doing this. It's not just a big city thing. And right now we've got this, I think, grassroots initiative, which is good to say slow down in town, but that's pretty vague. What I'm suggesting is that we pivot on this to say, you know, 20 is plenty. And that doesn't mandate that everybody drives 20 miles an hour. It's saying, hey, slow down. It makes people think about how fast they're driving. It's a simple graphic, it's a clear message, and it sets a specific goal. If you say slow down, people say, well, I was doing 55 and I did 50. This says on most streets in town, you should be doing 20 miles an hour. And if you think about it, you know, I live in a cul-de-sac and people crank up my road and it's only 10 houses, but nobody should be driving faster than 20 miles an hour on my cul-de-sac. It's inexcusable. Here's some other examples of the graphics. Walnut Creek, California, Minneapolis, Provo, Utah. And this is really just the graphics to show how widespread it is. And the little heart, that's the international symbol. And so which roads? And this is just an inset of, you know, the beach area. And if you look at it, and I think most of you lived in town for a while, if you look at the roads, most of those roads, you should be driving more than 20 miles an hour. I would say 90% of the roads, you know, if you drove 20 miles an hour, nobody would be inconvenienced. You know, obviously, I think the speed limit on Reef is probably 25. So if you're going from 20 to 25, 25 to 20 on some of these side roads, it shouldn't make a difference. But I think the truth is most people are probably doing much faster than the speed limit. And so how does this fit together with some of the other initiatives? This is part of the Vision Zero grant. And what this does is it's really an engagement activity, an awareness activity to have people think about how fast they're driving. This doesn't mandate the speed limit, but like in the UK, they do, the last step is they'll put a 20 mile an hour speed limit in a lot of the, you know, smaller streets. But we got to start somewhere and get people engaged, and then I think PTA support's a really big way, because, you know, you look at these walkers, and I've got a map to show how far people walk later, but it's really a community engagement, and it works alongside like our SSA4A grant. And so the next steps are really to get some alignment as part of the communication strategy, get a steering committee, establish goals, timing, funding, and kind of create a campaign. And then here's some additional materials. This is an example of like Stratfield School, how far a mile is. And most of these streets don't have sidewalks. And Stratfield probably has more sidewalks than most of the other neighborhoods. And so the 2020 campaign would be saying, hey, in the Walker district, this is a mile. You should be doing 20 miles an hour all the time. Because kids walk to school there, they ride their bikes. It's dangerous as hell. And you know, right now we don't have sidewalks, so this is the second best to having sidewalks. Here's Riverfield. I put this in for Sarah because this is her turf. But you know, most of the Mill Plain, no. Duck Farm, no. But I'd say just about every one of these roads within a mile of Riverfield School would be a candidate for a 20 is plenty. And then here's a checklist of what to do. I can send this to you. And then here's some places where it's successful, like in Seattle, they said, drive like your family lives here. New York is 20 is plenty, their vision zero. Austin in Texas, I'm actually was born in Texas, I got family down there. They're edgier. It's not just speeding, it's killing. Texas, I don't think that's a Connecticut thing, but slow streets, San Francisco. But you know, this is a campaign that's going on everywhere. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome, thanks, Jeff.
Any feedback or questions?
I'll let any of you guys.
I have a question. For the 20 is plenty campaign, or does it come, is there like a group that are proponents of this, like give you guidance on how to implement it?
Yeah, I'll send you the deck, but the last couple of pages, there's a whole communication package. Here, let me share this with you again. Here. Yeah, so there's a whole communication package here that they've generated. Can you guys see this?
Not yet.
Yep. Yes?
No,
Oh, okay, hold on, let me see here. How about now?
there it is.
Yeah, so basically, there's a whole communication package, you know, schedule meetings with engineering, police, health, build support, meet with PTAs, kind of meet the key figures, communicate what this is, then get endorsement from RTM, demonstrations of public actions, organize demonstrations to support the campaign, create action photos, set up a website, outreach public. Yeah, there's a whole set of resources behind this campaign, mostly in the UK, but this is widespread, widely done in the UK. You know, it's pretty much applicable other than the spellings of certain words like center. But and we could talk to other towns and cities, but there's a whole robust campaign approach that you know, we can leverage.
And I have one other question. The US isn't so good at measuring stuff, traffic related. The UK is probably better. Do they have those numbers that you were showing where like, this is what could happen? Are there numbers that say this is what did happen in certain communities after this campaign?
Yeah, they actually, what I read is they're pretty, like, Seattle, like I lived in Seattle for 4 years, and that's where I first heard about this. There are metrics. Basically, there are metrics in bigger cities, New York, Seattle, San Francisco, and they have measured the success of this. And it's all common sense, because it's, you know, you get hit by a car, and everybody's a cyclist here, right? Everybody in this room? Yeah, I mean, you know, you get hit by a car going 35, your chances aren't good. And you get hit by a car at 20, your chances are much better. So a lot of it's intuitive, but there are ample studies on reduced injuries related to, you know, reduced speeds.
That is absolutely established. What I'm just wondering is where they've implemented the campaign, 20 is plenty, have they identified?
I can, here, let me share this
I
with you.
mean, because New York City also has implemented Vision Zero, and numbers were going down for a long time, and more recently they've gone up. So
Let's see here.
I'm not trying to be obstructionist.
Yeah, no,
I'm certainly in favor of lower speeds.
This is, so here, like in Seattle, it says, so New York City, it said, reported 30% decrease in areas where the campaign was heavily promoted.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and then, oops. And then Seattle, it said, post-campaign showed 15% reduction. Austin, 12% reduction. San Francisco, reported decrease in traffic collisions by 17% on slow streets corridors. So from what I've read, it looks like where they've established these slow streets corridors in San Francisco, there's been a significant reduction. And you know, the difference is that it's a dense city. They probably have a lot of issues. You know, this is really an avoidance issue rather than a reduction issue, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But back to one of the questions earlier before I jumped on, you know, a lot of people don't ride their bikes here because it's freaking dangerous, right? It is freaking dangerous to ride your bike here. There's no lanes, there's no, you know, we don't even have fog lines most places. So by creating a safer environment and having people slow down, I think those two things go hand in hand.
Any other questions for Jeff?
I'll ask one last, oh, sorry, spam. One last question, same question I had earlier. There's a cost to doing this, I assume, and is there a grant that's available or something to cover the costs and when we pursue it?
So the campaign, it's largely an awareness, and like right now we've got, here, let me show you. Like in Stratfield, there's this grassroots effort to say, please slow down. So what I'm suggesting is to pivot from this to a 20 is plenty slow down campaign and try to start it as grassroots. And these signs aren't free, but they're not very expensive. This is more of a communication and awareness campaign. I think we could get some money from the town to do this, given the consistent support we've got from Bill G.
I would have to look to, I don't know what the committee budget is either, but or to potentially get something started, we might be able to use funds for that.
This is an awareness communications campaign more than anything else. The sign is important, but it's really getting people to change their behavior.
Yeah, that means that, I mean, as someone who works for a PR firm,
Yeah.
you have to have something in front of people and just the cost of, it's a big enough town that, you know, just generating the materials.
Well, there's a communications specialist who's been focused on this. Sarah, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, actually, I meant to bring this up earlier, but there is, I think I sent you to the committee, there's an effort from the First Selectman's office to do like a slow down type of campaign. So that meeting's coming up at the beginning of October, and using the woman who's in PR to kind of, I guess it's originally just kind of a brainstorming session on like how we could go about doing it. So 20 is plenty is like one way we could, because one thing that really resonated with me from what Jeff has said is, you know, it's one thing to say slow down when you're going 45 and you slow down to 40, right? Like you're slowing down, but it's not tangible. So this is a much more tangible message, which is why I personally really like it. And so we have the PR machine through the town to kind of get it out there. If we want to do signs or something like that, we'd have to talk if there's like budget through the First Selectman's office, or if like there's budget that we could contribute to get it off the ground. When it's been done in Stratfield Village, and then she did make a sign for Fairfield as well that you might have seen in some neighborhoods. That was like residents just paying for it.
They sell those. I live
Yeah.
I live on Jack.
I mean, I bought one for my house and it's been stolen, but you know, that and my little green man have all been stolen. So, you know, there could be, we could talk about how that could be.
Is there in those cities where they've been able to document the reduction, was there also an enforcement part of that?
I don't think, this is not an enforcement campaign.
No,
This
I
is-
understand that,
Yeah.
but you can put signs up all day. Sometimes you need to have the cops giving a few people tickets to reinforce that.
I don't think so, because I don't think there was an enforcement part, because my understanding is that changing the speed limit is the last step. So you've got to get people to realize that 20 miles an hour is fast enough. And then and this is just what I've read.
Yeah.
And then people slow down, and then all of a sudden, then the last step is to actually change the speed limit. I was in Scotland in the spring, and I took a picture, and you see some streets you see the 20 mile an hour speed limit, and then at the bottom it says 20 is plenty. It's a posted speed limit. That's the end step. But I don't think, we're never going to enforce our way into doing this. There's just too many speeders. We need to reduce the number of speeders and get people to say, and I was talking to my German cousins here right now, and he's a cyclist in London, and he was saying how there's this big tension between cyclists and non-cyclists. I said, well, I think one of the things Fairfield has going for it is that one of the largest plurality of voters, citizens, has kids here. Either has kids or had kids. And we all know all of us who've had kids or have kids know that it's ridiculously dangerous on our roads. And so I don't think we're going to get a big, hue and cry to say, I want to drive 30 miles an hour in my cul-de-sac or in my, on Jackman. Did you say you lived on Jackman?
Yes.
So I mean,
It would be great. It's more like 45. It's crazy.
yeah, but Jackman's probably posted 25, I would bet.
It is 25.
Yeah, but if you got people, if you put 20 as plenty, all of a sudden people maybe they get down to 30.
Yeah.
Which would be great.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, it's worth it. We gotta try. It's like we can throw up our hands and say, never gonna happen, or we can, and this has worked. This has worked other places. And if you can get this working in New York City, I would never think you could get this done in New York. But it's been pretty successful, 30% decrease.
20 because of gridlock.
No, that's, you say that, but you're thinking about Manhattan.
Yeah.
Most of the city is Queens and Brooklyn, these side streets for people, there's not, and even in Manhattan, like the streets, the east-west streets are not busy. They're not busy streets. Like if you're on the west side, I used to live on the west side, it's not a busy street, but people might drive fast. So if you get people to drive slowly on the streets, yeah, sure, if you're on like 6th Avenue in Midtown, that's different, but most of the streets, and let me just, where is it here? Look at the walkers for Riverfield. It's hard to find which streets here people would really get upset about not driving 20 miles an hour here. I mean, you wouldn't say Mill Plain. I mean, Sarah might. But Mill Plain and Duck Farm would not be.
Duck Farm's 25, so.
Right, but people probably drive
So
much
would
faster on the street.
you expect people to drive 20 on Mill Plain or no?
Would I expect
No,
them?
I mean, as part of this.
I mean, I think it would depend on the neighbor, well,
No?
Jeff's saying no, you wouldn't target Mill Plain as a neighborhood, is what Jeff's saying,
You
but like.
target but look at this, there's almost no through streets here. This is 1 mile, this is where the walkers are supposed to be. This would be a great place to start, is like, look at all these streets here.
Yeah.
Where kids should be safely walking to school. It's hard to argue against this one. These little cul-de-sacs, I door knocked here when I was running for TPZ, and they're all cul-de-sacs. I mean, you shouldn't be driving fast on these roads.
Any other questions?
I guess Round Hill's right here, so.
Round Hill's also 25, so
Yeah.
good luck getting anybody to do 25 on Round Hill.
Round Hill's right here.
There's sidewalks on one side where the college is, yeah.
Yeah,
Same thing with Jackson.
so I guess my ask on this is think about it. It would be helpful if we could get a consensus to endorse this or get feedback, refine it. And First Selectman's office is initiating a campaign. I think that the whole slowdown campaign is a little nebulous. I would
I think that's
suggest,
just their starting, that's like their starting point.
Yeah.
But so I think, Jeff, maybe what we can do for next steps is I'll send the PowerPoint, if you can just send it to me,
Yeah.
and then I'll send it around, and if you guys have any feedback or anything, and then I guess technically, like, the committee can vote to endorse the campaign.
Great.
Not today, because we don't have enough people, but well, we lost our quorum, yeah. So we can vote next time on endorsing it, and then how we can help get it off the ground with the town. So, awesome. Anything else? Does anybody else have anything?
I have one thing.
Yes.
I just want to note in the record for the meeting that I texted with the city of New Haven engineer and asked if if Yale had any part in the Westville cycle tracks, and he said no. So just want to clarify.
Alright, so motion to
He didn't lie
adjourn.
to me.
So moved.
Great. This is just an aside, by the way. I requested that Fairfield Library order killed by a traffic engineer. And I returned it this morning. So I highly recommend it.
What is it?
Yeah, killed by a traffic engineer,
Oh, yeah.
definitely worthwhile.
is that Marone?
Dr.
Marone?
Wes Marshall,
Okay.
the
Oh,
last
yeah,
one.
yeah, I know that book, yeah.
definitely good.
Yeah, I read about it.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Jeff. Enjoy your cousin.
Thanks for your volunteerism, peeps. Appreciate it.
Thank you.